Hello again, welcome back everyone. Liquor Hound here with you, and thank you for joining me once again for another spirit review video. Today we've got a lot of bottles to go through, so I'm going to try to run through everything fairly quickly. I will put all the details in the description, so be sure and check that out. If you want to jump to a specific bottle that you're interested in, I'll put timestamps down there as well. This is, the price points and all that, but there's so many great things about this tequila and this distillery that it's probably going to be too much for me to remember to say each and every one, but again, they're down there. So here we go. G4 Tequilas, one of my favorite tequila lines that is currently available. And I know right now I can go to, a big box liquor store and I can probably find each and every one of these. I think the Extra Añejo 5 may be getting a little hard to find, but they're still producing it. It's still out there. We have the whole lineup. We have the Blanco starting at about $34. We have the Reposado at about $45, $48, somewhere right in there. They're 80 proofers. We have the high proof Blanco. High proof Blanco is actually the same price as the Reposado, about $48, but this is 108 proof versus the 80 that these are. Then we have, and the Reposado is aged 6 months, by the way. Then we go up to 18 months for the Añejo. The Añejo price point is about $65. It's also at 80 proof. Then we have the Extra Añejo, no age statement on it, but it is just over 3 years old. This one is also at 80 proof, priced at about $100. And finally we have the age-stated 5-year-old Extra Añejo, and it has a little 5 right here on the little tag around the neck. And this one retails about $165. Now, they're all coming from the El Pandillo distillery. And El Pandillo just means the gang, and it happened to be the name of Felipe Camarena, the man that's behind all these with his two sons, Luis and Alan. It was his grandfather's favorite bull. That was his name of that bull, so that's what he named his distillery after. Now the Camarena name you may have heard going back because, this is G4, which stands for 4 generations, because that Camarena name, it does go back. It goes way back, all the way to a different distillery, the La Anteña distillery, where they, first were doing Tapatio back in 1937. Then they were doing El Tesoro, another fantastic line coming out of there. And now, that distillery is still doing its thing. It's ran by Felipe's brother, Carlos Camarena. But Felipe Camarena started El Pandillo distillery, I guess they broke ground around 2011. So it's relatively new. And modern, to be honest. I mean, when you look at pictures of it, it is a very beautiful distillery. But he's doing a lot of old school methods with maybe a little modern twist, let's say. Felipe is known as the mad scientist in the tequila world because he's always, creating a machine to do something. He's not going out there trying to buy an expensive machine when he can create something from tractor parts or a steamroller or something like that. And that is pretty much what he's done because, I mean, when you look at, most people have a roller mill or a shredder type thing. And he made one out of tractor parts, and they call it Igor, and it does its job really well. And then he also, instead of using the old 2-ton lava rock wheel that was traditionally pulled around by a mule or a horse, nowadays they have like little tractors that pull them around. And that's the tahona crushed piñas. He's still tahona crushing piñas, but not necessarily with the traditional lava rock wheel. He's actually doing repurposed, basically a steamroller. So big steel heavy drum with nodules on it that rolls across the floor in this little, square, almost like a table to keep the piñas and the juice all inside. And they're running this thing back and forth, and it's just crushing everything. And I think they called it, Frankenstein or Felipenstein, jokingly. But that's just all part of, his genius almost, I would say, personally, because he thinks forward. He thinks about, well, maybe I don't have to always do it the old school way, exactly. I can kind of create something, repurpose something, and get the same, efficiency. And probably even more efficient because he also harvests rainwater. He harvests rainwater. He has a spring that is like 200 yards from the front door that they use that water in a 50-50 combination to create these tequilas. He thinks that imparts, and it does impart, a specific characteristic that you'll taste throughout the whole lineage. That's how come to me, you're going to find that these all, you know, they're from the same distillery by the way you when you taste them. They're like, they all share a very similar vein, and I happen to think it's probably the water doing a lot of that. Of course, you know, the agaves, the state-grown agaves that they harvest in the highlands, they're about 7 years old when they harvest the plants. Let's see, they're basically organic. They're not certified organic because Felipe's like, why am I going to go through all the time and effort of, you know, paying somebody to certify me when I just do it the way we've always done it, which is without chemicals. And just he creates his own compost from the spent agave fibers. Once the tequila process is done, he'll compost those, and then he'll spread those out in the field and stuff like that. So he does all that kind of thing. He just got through digging a big a retainment, that's pond, small lake, but what it is it's catching a lot of that water, the rainwater that's coming down the mountain. It'll catch some of that. Of course, he's responsible. He doesn't catch it all, but he catches some of it. And what he's using it for is because instead of going to the city water supply or going to that spring or going to deep water, well water, to cool off his condensers as they're, you know, making the distillation process, you know, you got all those hot vapors rising up, and once it hits that the condenser, it has to have some cold water coils and copper coils to cool it down so it'll collect into basically turn it into a liquid. And that cold water gets heated up in that process, and rather than just dumping it, what he's actually doing is returning it to the pond where it's just naturally going to cool off, and then he just reuses that water right back in the condensers. And you know, it's just another thing that he does. It's amazing. What else? Oh, his agave plants. He's thinking ahead. He's like, you know what? If we keep using all the baby agaves that just spring out from the side of the current, basically the parent plant, it'll have like little baby offshootings. You know, we might run into a problem down the road where, you know, it's almost like there's not enough biodiversity. So we shouldn't do that. What we'll do is I'll plant fig trees and guava trees and cinnamon trees and all these, you know, fruit trees and cinnamon just in there mixed in with the agaves so that you attract natural pollinators, the bees and the birds, and they'll naturally pollinate the plants for you, and you'll get offspring, and because they can create offspring in 2 different ways, and you get it the more traditional way, basically. And those plants will be a little sturdier, a little more healthy, and they'll be able to last a lot longer. So that's what he's doing on that side of things. Yeah. So anyway, all that said, let's go ahead and get to the nosing and tasting with these. I'm going to start with the 80 proof Blanco, and then I'm going to go 80 proof Repo, 80 proof Añejo, Extra Añejo at 80 proof, finally on the 90 proof 5-year-old. And then I'm actually going to come back, reset my palate on the 80 proof Blanco before going into the 108 Blanco. Because I'm afraid if I go here, then here, it might make these feel softer. So I want to, you know, give you a really representation of what they're going to feel like to you when you first taste them. Okay, here we go. Blanco, $34, right about there, yeah, $34. 80 proof. I know when these come off the copper pot stills, they come off about 114. And he actually uses that spring water along with the harvested rainwater, about 50%. It's not the tank, not the lake. He doesn't use that. It's different. When they catch it off the roof, they'll use that. They'll clean it and probably RO it. But that's what they're using for these. Okay. All right. At 80 proof, on the nose, nice and clean, very vegetal agave. You'd almost get like the little hint of almost like a sugar cane-esque vibe to the nose, that vegetal sweet type thing. You get the white pepper, you get cinnamon, a little doughiness, sourdough, not the bread when it's baked, but the actual sourdough is in there. There's a little bit of light fruitiness going on along with a little bit of a light floralness, very balanced between the two. A little bit of butter. All right, now we're going to taste it. Oh, that's really nice. Right there, we're getting a good medium viscosity. Okay, here we go. Yeah, really good medium viscosity. You get that really nice, again, I was almost like on a sugarcane sweetness. It does kind of remind me of that when it's raw sugarcane, it's fresh pressed. It's not pure sugar. It's kind of got a vegetal sweetness to it, and that's what that has. You do get a lot of lemon, lime, oil in there. Almost a little hint of olive brine popping as well. Again, that white pepper and cinnamon is, you know, making itself known. Sorry, the dog was getting some water. I just don't want it to be too noisy. Let's see. Yeah, but overall, it finishes really nice and clean. It does focus on the citrus aspect for the fruit, and then you get a little light floralness from that, you know, that highland agave, basically. Oh, that's so good. It just lingers. For $34, it's amazing. Blanco. Okay, now we're going to go Reposado. This Reposado is 6 months old. Still 80 proof. Price point was, let's see, $48. Okay. Picking up just a smidge of caramel, not as much as I would expect, but that brings up another thing that Felipe Camarena does. He uses a lot of barrels over and over. So in tequila, very similar to how a lot of Texas bourbons are, it's really hard to make them go past 5 years of age. Once they start getting too old, you start pulling a little too much, you know, tannin, you start picking up a little too much oak. Sometimes they'll just evaporate out from the barrel from you just from the heat. That can always happen. But the way you avoid some of that happening is typically in tequila world, they'll use a lot of underground cellars, or they'll use caves. Fuente Seca, I think, does that, where they'll get 9-year-old maturations and maybe even beyond that just by having it in a very cool climate. And they'll probably use barrels over and over, so the barrel isn't contributing a ton. It's basically just resting that spirit for years and years. And Felipe Camarena knows this, so what he does is he actually is in the process of building an underground, I guess, aging barrel room. And he also uses a lot of spent barrels, so he's not trying to get a lot of wood tannin or anything like that. So that's how come, even though that this one is 6 months old, on the nose it shares a lot of characteristics of the Blanco. It is still slightly doughy. There is a little bit of wood sugar. The pepper and cinnamon is bumped up now. Maybe even a little more than the Blanco was by itself. That olive brine note is still coming through. Lemon and lime oil is still there. But we're starting to pick up a little butteriness, a little butter tone going on. Very light nuttiness as well. Alright, let's taste it. Oh, it's so good. That's a medium, just above medium viscosity. Great balance between when we talk about wood sugars, and even though this was only in it just for a little bit, it picked up some of the caramel tones on the palate. It does have that lemon lime oil thing is still carrying through. The sourdough, the actual dough is still carrying through a little bit. Floralness may be bumped a little more, as is again, that citrus pop is bumped a little more as well. Wood is coming through as just oak, clean, pure oak. Kind of shows up mid-palate, kind of rides the ride throughout. A little hint of vanilla as well. Little whisper of cedar to that Repo. Very, very well done. For, again, $45, $48. Alright, resetting my nose and my palate there. Okay, now we're at 18 months old for the Añejo. The 18-month-old Añejo sells for about $65, so still not even a big jump here. On the nose, much more buttery on the nose. But that said, it still carries that lineage. We're still getting that citrus oil pop coming through. There is a little more, I think there's a touch more fruit coming from that barrel now. I think I'm starting to pick up a little cherry. So we're not just sitting on that citrus oil aspect. Yeah, and actually I think the pepper and the cinnamon is a little more receded. And I think the wood is presenting a little more vanilla here. Not quite creme brulee, but we're starting to get close to that as far as like picking up the fruits with the sweet caramelized sugars. The brine, that olive brine, I think is turning more into butter here. Okay. All right, let's taste it to be sure. Oh, that's nice. I've had some reposados that have this much wood on them. That's how careful he is being with the wood maturation. Oh, that's delicate. That's nice. Medium, just above medium viscosity. Again, we're starting with the caramelized wood sugars right up front. You get that little bit of that vanilla bean underneath, but then you're hit almost immediately with that oak. You're hit with a little touch of cedar as well now. The cinnamon, the white pepper is still showing up on the mid palate. That doughiness is now way in the background. So that fresh dough thing that we were picking up even through the reposado is now finally creeping into the back space, but it's still there. A little more cherry, I would say, on this añejo than I was picking up on this one. It's not crazy complex on fruits yet, but it does have a little bit of a barnyard essence on the nose. And if you're coming from the Scotch world, or even some bourbons will get a barnyardish note. In the Scotch world, that would be like Clynelish Brora. Oh my goodness, that would be sought after. Here I love it. I find it a lot on, actually, when I'm doing St. Sally, the blending. A lot of MGP will get this. At certain stages, they pick up that barnyardish. And barnyard is just meaning, you know how when you're kind of like at the, I always tell everybody, it's like when I am at the rodeo. And you get the smell of the hay, the straw, maybe a little mud, maybe a little manure. But you get it all in the air, and it kind of, it's just barnyardish. And that's a little bit what I pick up here. It's nice. It's a nice element. It's not like a cow patty or anything like that. Don't think like that. Okay. Just one last go on that one, because it is really, really good. Yeah. It does everything just right for that añejo. Its price point, $65. That's a great price point for that quality. Again, there are 0 sugars added anywhere in anything that the Camarenas do here, Felipe Camarena, and even on the La Antena side. But you get this natural sweetness. You get this beautiful natural sweetness, this full flavor that just is pure agave, pure tequila, as it was always pretty much meant to be. That's what we're getting here. It's a great balance of oak, and the freshness of the agave is found right here on this $65 añejo. Alright, now we're going to the $100 extra añejo. The extra añejo is aged just over 3 years. Okay, similar, but a little more fruit driven. You still get the floral, you still get the citrus, the lemon lime oil, you still get that. You still get about the same spice tone. A little bit of the barnyard. But I'm picking up more cherry here on the extra añejo, which stands to reason because now we've been in those spent barrels, but they're still giving a little something at 3 years. All right. Medium, just above medium high, medium, it's not quite medium high viscosity, but it's over medium. Whoa. Good combination of the two oaks. So we get oak, get a good combination of oak and cedar. The two woods is what I meant. buttery. That barnyard is still on the nose. Yeah, right up front, caramelized. We're starting to get into almost like the yamish character of the agave. Baked sugars. You get that. You get a bigger cherry tone kind of hitting up front. Trying to search that fruit component. Maybe a little twinge of dried apricot in there. A little, there is that barnyardish, little hay going on. But the fresh vegetalness is still showing through at 3 years of age. You have not lost the freshness and purity of the agave even here. Cinnamon and white pepper is actually a little more subdued. Now that we're getting a little more wood maturation, everything's kind of calming down on the spice front. The sourdough character that was still kind of picking up, even subtly in the añejo, is now gone. I don't pick that up nearly as much. I think now we're focusing a little more on the barrel. But I actually love that. Matter of fact, in my personal preference and my personal experience of tequilas, because that was my first love, that's what I first was collecting, you know, I always found that I loved the bookends, basically. I loved blancos and I loved extra añejos. At the time, they were just called añejos. But I loved those really heavily wooded, mature añejos back then. And now, I love them all. I find the fascination in fantastic reposados, great añejos like this one, love them. And here, I'm still going back to, this is a little more wood focused on this one. Little cedar, little oak. But at least it is still pulling a nice cherry tone to complement that fresh agave that is still lingering through, the little light floralness. And I think so far, the one thing I would say is that floral and fruit balance, 50-50, is perfectly balanced through each one of these. Okay, that's a great one for $100. Alright, now the 5-year-old age stated. This is bumping up to 90 proof here. Price point also bumps up to $160. Oh, alright, got the eyebrow raise. What I was noticing was the amount of fruit is now popping. Now we're picking up dried strawberries here. That is not often found. Dried strawberries, raspberries, and the cherry tone that I was picking up here is in this one as well. That dried strawberry tone is so rare. And I can tell you, I think in the tequila realm, for me personally, I've only picked it up once. And that was in the Patron Lalique, the 2nd edition. That had that characteristic, but it was a little fuller. But it's in this one at 5 years old and at $160. It's in here. Again, the cinnamon, the white pepper kind of is now a little more subdued as it was here. But again, the fruits, the red fruits are definitely popping now. The oak, the vanilla, that's carrying. The cedar is in there. Still picking up the vegetal freshness of the agave with the floral pop. A little bit of a, I would almost call that, it's almost calling back a little bit to that olive brine from earlier. Okay, let's taste it. 5-year-old. Fruit driven, medium high viscosity. That cherry, that dried strawberry, that raspberry pops right up front. Right behind it is where you get that combination of the white pepper and the fresh agave riding up early. That's so good. Red licorice is in there. That vanilla bean is still rolling, but you get that big red fruit, so it's almost like red licorice. Oak shows up, but again, we're not heavy-handed with the oak, even at 5 years old. It does feel a little more American oak. Maybe a hint of mahogany, a little cedar on the back end. as we dive into the finish. Pepper and cinnamon are in there, but again, they picked up a little bit of amplification from this one, but I think it's because it went from 80 to 90 proof. That is fantastic. Yeah, so, you know, I loved them all, but I really am finding that fascinating. But again, that's personal preference. That's just me. I've always been that way. Trust me, when you're in these kind of pure tequilas, there's no wrong answers. Alright. Resetting, because I'm going to reset my palate. Going back to the 80 proof Blanco just for a little sip real quick. Reset my nose as well. Hasn't changed. It's been airing out all this time. Everything's still there. Lesser quality tequilas might have already watered, you know, kind of like just evaporated, almost smelled like nothing by now. Oof. Okay, let's see how that differs from the 108. 108 high proof Blanco, the same price as the Reposado at $48. Remember, when it comes off the still here, it's double distillation. It comes off the still, the copper pot still, about 114 proof. So this has had a little bit of that 50-50 harvested rainwater / spring water just to bring it down to 108. And just like this 5-year-old to this extra añejo, it just turns up the amplification from the Blanco. From 80 to 108, everything is pretty much the same on the nose. It's just much more pronounced. Okay, here we go. Let's taste it. Medium high viscosity. It's a big boy. Ooh, that's good. But because we're amplifying the ABV, we're also retaining a lot more of the viscosity, the oils, natural oils that are in the distillate. So when you taste this, it's going to be, you know, a little punchier, just a little bit, but again, very rich, very mouth-coating, long-lasting. Yeah. It's really nice because this one, while you do get the citrus right up front, lemon lime oil, you're immediately hit by the agave. That fresh vegetal floral combination, you get hit with it, but it's pure agave in its purest form right there on your palate. Just a subtle hint of almost a butter / olive brine is in there. But to me, I think it's the vegetal, the fresh agave and the citrus that really just runs. Of course, that pepper, the cinnamon, that's in there. But I think the pepper is a little more showing on the 108 proofer than it was even here. Because I think here was like a little combination. This one I think is a little more white pepper heavy. So, I mean, to be honest, they're a great line. That's why I wanted to do this review for you. It took me time to be able to acquire each and every one of these bottles. But I've done that, including the 55, which I'll push right here just because I'm going to review that next. I'm going to review that for my patrons, so if you want to join me over at patreon.com/liquorhound, I will be reviewing this very rare one at the end of this video. But I hope you enjoyed it. There is no wrong answers here, okay? Even if you go to any of the other brands that they're doing, you know, we're talking Pasote or the Volans, and they do some other brands, and I'll put, again, everything's in the description. Just know that they're all additive free, they're all organic, even though they haven't got the certification, but they are doing it very pure forms, and they're not trying to lean on any agave sugars or anything goofy thing else that some do. And you know, I'm not going to fault everyone for doing that. I still feel like if you want a little change of pace and you want a little dessert style tequila, there's a place for it. But for me personally, I love additive-free tequilas, and that's what we have here coming to us from Felipe Camarena and his sons Luis and Alan. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too long. But thank you as always for being here. Again, if you want these videos ad-free and 2 weeks early, join me over at patreon.com/liquorhound. But keep leaving all those great comments, and I'll get to them just as soon as I can. Thank you for watching. Everyone have a great day, and cheers.